Welcome to Kevjet, the podcast, Judd Lander.
Nice to meet you. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to have this conversation, and I have a feeling you have a lot to say.
Well, put it this way. If there's such an antique in the music industry, I am it. I'm full of knowledge, man full of trivia, man full of happenings. So there you go.
I saw in an interview not that long ago you were writing a book. Is that completed?
Do you know what? No, there's so much. Believe me, there's an old editor of Melody Maker, which is a music rag many years ago. He's sort of working with, because we worked together years ago at the record company. And, I have a habit of going off on tangents all the time. And he's the guy trying to hold me back. Well, I've been working on this book now for about, my goodness, I don't know how many years. And things keep popping up. And he said, you've got to stop. There's enough trivia there to fill the House of Commons. So, yeah, I'm hoping by the end of this year, it'll be all packaged. But it's a fun book, and there have been so many hilarious things that have happened in my life. And it's all down to my roots being from Liverpool, because we all have a sense of humor there. We were born with a sense of humor. I don't know whether it's in the water or what. But yeah, I've had a fantastic journey from being, a kid almost adopted, more of a single family, to, meeting royalty like, King Charles and various people like that. So from a kid with hole in his trousers to there, it's been, for me, a magical mystery tour. It's been a great journey.
What do you think is your favorite memory that will be in the book?
There are so many, honestly, there really are. There are fun memories. I mean, I'm just trying to think of, there's so many. The Cavern days, they were great. And I could see why Macca and the Beatles always recalled their journey by, and I still play at the Cavern Club. I mean, I've beaten the Beatles at their own game. The band I was in called Hideaways. We still, at this tender age of 21, we're still playing, and I put an event on every year called Liverpool Rocks, and all the old bands sort of come and play with me. So they're pleased. They get a few bob, and they're great. They can still kick ass on stage. But the funniest thing now is the girls who used to follow us years ago is sort of brief pantaloons. Now it's big baggy pantaloons being thrown at stage and dentures being thrown at the stage.
It's a health and safety.
Health, that's out the window, believe me. So, yeah, Liverpool played an integral part of my sort of upbringing as a musician. Then I started doing sessions in London, and that was by default. It was with a band called the Mersey Beats, and they had a hit with Sorrow, which Bowie eventually covered. But they asked me to play on one of their records, moved up to London, had a great time in London. And then I kindly was invited to stay with a guy called Neil Aspinall, who was the Beatles' unsung hero. A lot of people talk about the Beatles, Zeppelin and everyone else, but Neil Aspinall was someone very special who, was so protective of the Beatles.
Was he their road manager?
Yeah, he was, and eventually became director of Apple itself. Well, he was an old mate. We used to sort of meet him at Hayman's Green where the Beatles first started out. And we'd all get drunk at parties at Mona's place and Pete Best, the old drummer's mum's place. And then when I went to London, I stayed with Neil, with a mate of mine, Bill. And we just crashed down. He said, you can stay here for a little bit till you get yourself sorted out with an apartment. And I always remember the first day of staying there. It was a very posh, a grace and favour place that the Beatles gave him in Sloane Street called 40 House. Very prestigious. And they had a concierge on the door. And I remember when I first left Neil's house to go off somewhere, the doorman went, good morning, Judd. He said, welcome. He said, where are you off to today? I said, a bit of business, Dean, a bit of business. And as I walked up, I came back. The truth be known, I was going to the Dole office to sign on. But I didn't want to tell him that. It blew me away. Anyway, so whilst there, it was fantastic because the Beatles were at the heyday and they're all happening then. And Neil would say, oh, do you want to come out for dinner? We're going to meet up with George in the King's Road in the restaurant. So we go down there and it'd be fantastic. I always remember George and Patty, with Patty at the time, walking along the road, and we were behind them just chatting away. And then this girl dropping a scarf in front of George. And George picked it up. She didn't see him, obviously. He picked it up and said, "Excuse me, love, I think you've dropped your scarf." She turned around and screamed, "It's a Beatle!" Well, of course, hell went wild and people running over the road for autographs. We had to dash back to the cars and zoom up. And I missed out on a bloody good meal that night, which was going to pay. But anyway, so that got me in. So that was all the scene, in the 60s, the Apple records. I go down there and I then end up moving in with the disc cutter, Apple, George Peckham, who used to write on the run-off grooves of the Beatles records, a Porky Prime cut. And if anyone has got any collectibles or old Apple records, just look at the run-off groove. George Porky Peckham, a prime cut, and he'd often be a little bit funny and naughty on occasions. So they're collectibles if anyone can find them. So that took me through my journey of working with Apple. I worked with John Lennon then on his rock and roll album and a few people, and I ended up playing with a band, and it's the saddest story in the world, a band called Badfinger. And Badfinger wrote Without You, which Harry Nilsson had a hit with and Mariah Carey had that massive hit with. And the boys never got a single penny from the writing. And in the end, they got basically shafted by an American gangster, under the guise of being an agent. And he'd done a couple of other people. Yeah, I won't give him his name. You can do your research.
Yeah.
But both Pete and Tommy Evans, who was a dear friend of mine, both hung themselves as a consequence for not having any money, walking with holes in their shoes while these records that they'd written and created were at number one. There are sad stories. And you have to be very savvy if you're going to sign up or join an agent, you've got to be so clued now that, you don't fall to situations like that. But anyway, so they were at Apple. I then got my first job in the record industry with Charisma Records. And on that label, that was a real cool label. On that label were Genesis, Van der Graaf Generator, String Driven Thing. There was some amazing bands. And Monty Python was signed to the label as well. And I had a great time there. Genesis, Pete Gabriel, who is just one genius, a musical genius. And to this day, he can still deliver a top 30, top 10, top 5 hit record. I think he's like me, 25 years old, but
still young.
He was lovely, and Phil Collins was a dear friend, and we had a great time. So that got me into the record industry. Then I joined Epic Records, which were around the corner from the Charisma Records. I was poached from there by a director at Epic, and that's where it all started happening, where all the cool stuff started. And then I ended up becoming director of PR for Epic Records. I'm working with ABBA, Michael Jackson, Meatloaf. There were so many acts.
You're actually quite famously responsible for breaking the UK with Meatloaf, aren't you?
Well, yeah, Marvin Lee O'Day. Well, and that was all the story behind this. And it's a fact that's never pointed out. It was the UK, and I'm going to blow my own trumpet, and me, that helped break meat throughout the world. And the way it worked, Steve Popovich, who was a friend of mine that worked at Epic originally in New York, Steve was a lovely guy, and we got on well. He used to call me Sir Judd, and he'd phone up to the UK. "All right, can I speak to Sir Judd, please?" And I'd meet him in New York, and he'd introduce me to people like Madonna and people like that as, "This is my friend Sir Judd from England." So we had this little thing going on. Anyway, so Steve Popovich was head of Epic, the Epic label in the US, and very respected as a PR guy. He eventually set up his own label, and he was looking for acts, and he found Jim Steinman and Meat. And they came to him with this project, and he couldn't get arrested with it. They tried, but I think Steve Van Zandt in some way got involved. There's a connection there. I'm trying to recall what it was. But anyway, the project was so out there that the major labels were frightened to take it on. Anyway, he eventually, through his old contacts at Epic, he eventually sprung up a deal by doing a label deal with Epic to put the Bat Out of Hell album out. But the American side was still a bit cooler, but the agents and the sales guys and all that weren't sort of working full ahead, not working full steam. So it was like in limbo. So I get a phone call from Steve, and he said, he said, I've got problems over here. He said, I can't get fucking arrested. We're trying to motivate this fucking team in the States. He said, like pulling. Anyway, he said, look, I want you to help me. He said, I'm going to send over a video. He said, we spent shitloads of money on this video. It's fantastic. Have a look at the video. See what you can do. We need some help. So the video comes through our A&R department, whatever. The guy comes out, said, have a look at this, what Poppy has sent over. And we put it on, and it was 8 minutes long. And it was fantastic. It was Bat Out of Hell, the motorbike scene and everything. But the problem is, where do I get 8 minutes, the full 8 minutes shown on British TV? Top of the Pops, you had to be in the charts. Other shows were a little bit, but you'd only get that much. Well, there was one show that I had a great relationship with called the Old Grey Whistle Test, which is Bob Harris and a couple of the old DJs worked on. And the way that worked is that the BBC had given the show the downtime of, after the late night news, they would get a specific amount of time. If the news finished earlier, the show would be extended by that amount of time. Well, there was an opportunity that was coming along, and I saw Mike Appleton, who was the exec of the Old Grey Whistle Test. And I said to Mike, I've got a video here. I said, let's have a look at it. I'll play it you now. I said, but it's 8 minutes long, and you can't sell it on a little slip. So anyway, Mike sits down with me. We look at it, and Mike's going, he can't. He said, no, I totally understand where you're coming from. Leave it with me. And eventually we found a space. He went for it and he put it on UK TV. It exploded. Everybody was asking, who is this? Suddenly I'm starting to get airplay on radio, national radio, with this track, 8 minute track. I don't know whether I'd done an edit to tease them. I might have. I can't recall that. But radio started playing and shouting about me. And then it started to explode. Sales, the salesman couldn't keep up with it. UK sales go up and up and up and up and up. And then I get the phone call from Poppy saying, I don't know what I've done, but something's happening over here. The US had picked up on it. So the US then started working, and then the rest is history. The UK went on, it holds the world's record for the amount of UK sales and how many years it's sort of been up there in the chart. So yeah. Meet was great. I mean, I've got some great shots of us together, and the band were tight. I mean, he's a very funny guy. You know, he was a right comedian. And Jim, I always found Jim, he was like the mad professor. And they come over, they'd be in a hotel. I go into Jim's Jim's bedroom, and I see on the top of the television stand or whatever, thousands of little bottles of pills. He's a vitamin freak. And I'm saying, Jesus, how long does it take you to take each of those bloody pills? Must take hours. But we had a great time. And then I got a proclamation from the mayor of Cleveland, Ohio. So I got this proclamation on the wall. I mean, over here, it's like the freedom of the city. But, I don't know. I think you'd have to carry a vehicle rather than the sheep across, the Cleveland main street or whatever. So I had a great time with them, travel with them. And then I worked with ABBA. I mean, ABBA was a special moment. We really got on well. I think they got the gist of my humor. Sure. And, I introduced them to McCartney because at the time where we were situated, McCartney's office was across the way from my office. And we were chatting away one day and somebody said, oh, by the way, Judd knows McCartney. And they said, we'd love to meet him. I said, okay. Well, I phoned up, spoke to Alan, who was Paul's main man at the time, said, Alan, I've got this band called ABBA, over at the office. They'd love to meet Paul. He said, yeah, he's downstairs in the studio. So he said, hang on a minute. So I took them over, and Linda and Paul, Linda was alive then. Well, you can imagine Benny and Bjorn in awe of this great producer, and Linda talking to the girls about trivia, well, she was probably doing the vegetarian thing with them.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah. So that was quite fun. And then I took Michael Jackson. There was another time where Michael Jackson, who was very funny, because I worked with the Jacksons when they were first signed to Epic Records. Again, Steve Popovich was involved because he brought them over with Ronald Luxemburg, who's an executive for Epic. And they brought them over to the UK, pinched them from Motown, but with the intention of getting Michael. I mean, that was so we get the package. So I worked with them on their first tour, and Show Me the Way, I got them on Top of the Pops for Show Me the Way, where they're all wearing scarves, all suited and booted. I hadn't gone solo that time. So they're all up there. We're in the dressing room. Joe Jackson, the dad, started getting a little bit frisky with a couple of them, giving them a little slap. And I got a bit worried about that. I said, Joe, look, any issues, leave them to after the show. We've got a job to do, and this, that, and the other. Anyway, so I saw the bad side of that part of the family, because he worked them and worked them and worked them. So next thing is, the band are there, floor manager comes down, Judd, we're ready to go on now, get the guys out. So I push them all out. Joe goes up with them, can't find Michael. I'm looking around going, where the hell is he? And suddenly this voice, the way the BBC was set up, it was like a donut. In the basement is one circle, and all the doors was the same. It's quite confusing. And all I could do is this voice going, Judd, where are you? Judd, I can't find it. He was lost. So I grabbed him, took him up, and we done the show. They were great, although they had to go at me about because it was live and the orchestra insisted on playing with them. But anyway, we had a good laugh there. Then when Michael went solo, I then started taking care of him. We'd go to the airport to pick him up from the airport. There's myself and a CBS representative who dealt with all the work permits and everything. Anthea, I think it was at the time. So anyway, we get the permit, show the permit. He comes through, no problem. We jump in the car. And I made the fatal mistake of going past the palace one day to go.
I was going to ask about this story because I love.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. So we went past the palace. We're late. We went past the palace as a shortcut to get to the South Bank TV show. And as we go past, I just look out the window and casually say, she's in today. And Michael, what do you mean, Judd? I said, well, flag up, the Queen's in. Flag down, the Queen's away. No, can we go in and have a cup of tea? I said, no, not today. We're late. Anyway, we zoom up. We do the show. Every time he came into town, Judd, can we go past the palace? I say, we can't. We're doing the BBC. We're just, Judd. And they have this way of charming everybody. So I'd have to go past the palace to go to TV Centre, which is the other side of town. And then I go past and the flag would be down. He said, oh, next time. Or can we go in? So there's a little joke going on there. And then one day, because we were looking, he loved all the trivia, the guards marching up and down, and what they wore. Well, I ended up doing a big radio. Capital Radio was like mega, the first big independent radio station in London. And it was by Euston Towers, the office and studios used to be. So we had a big interview with Michael. And I always got a smaller limo rather than a big one, sort of a bit more subtle. And we were driving down the Euston Road. We're trying to be discreet. And there were thousands upon thousands of kids. So I told the driver to drive around the back. I knew a back route. And we parked up around the corner where I could slightly see what was going on. But we were right next door to what there was called a militaire shop selling old military outfits. And it was called Lawrence Corner. So I'm sitting there and Michael's, I said, we'll hang on here for a little bit. Michael talking over, hey, Judd, those the hats that the soldiers wearing? I said, yeah, we've got to go in, Judd. And he used to do the violin job. And I go, okay. So we had a bit of time to spare. So I think it was Joe. I'm trying to remember his bodyguard, but it was me, his bodyguard, I told the driver to stay there. And we walked in. As we walked in, this young girl froze, little assistant. And Michael froze. Michael, say hello. Oh, hi, I'm Michael. Nice. Oh, well, then she was over the moon. So he was very nice to her. And he's running around buying this. I have one of them, please. I have one of them. And a friend of mine stole her own the shop. I couldn't believe that. Look, I have another one and another. And he ended up, we had loads of stuff we took in. But he ended up with his helmet, which is the old Sun Dunes helmet. And he had that on. He wore that to the next interview, which was at the Radio 1, called Round Table. And Kid Jensen was the presenter. And they had George Harrison. I always remember because we'd having a laugh with the scouts bit, all right, George, all right, Judd, all that bit. Well, anyway, they done the interview, and there are photographs of Michael with the pith helmet on as that thing. Anyway, long and the short of it, bizarre about that Lawrence Corner incident was that sadly when Michael died, obviously I was doing some news interviews, TV, BBC and all that bit about, working with him and what sort of character was he like. And Thames London Weekend, no, Thames ITN News came to me and I told them a story about Lawrence Corner. How the hell they done it, I don't know. But don't forget this, like 40 years later. And how the hell they found out that one of the reporters found the original girl that worked in the shop. She's now, I don't know, about 50 years old or whatever. And we got together and I recalled the thing and she said, yeah. She says, I just couldn't believe it. I really wanted to go over and see him over the road, but my boss wouldn't let me go because there was no one in. And then he walks into my shop and she says, I've still got his autograph and all. I thought that was quite sweet. And then if you remember, when he done all his stage out, the live stage, look at the outfits he was wearing. Don't blame it on the broogie, blame it on me.
Exactly.
Well, I was the one that sort of got it all together. I was over the moon. And he did recall, I met him at the Brit Awards many years later. We're having a joke. And I said, remember the braids? He says, yeah. So there you go. A bit of trivia there. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, was it true that Paul McCartney was at one of your very first gigs in London?
Yes. That was another bizarre story with Macca, whereby I'd been in London doing my session work, and then I joined a band called Cellophane, and it was a soul band, and we got together. I was thrown in as the extra musician, but what it was, Ronnie Scott, the famous sax player, Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, Ronnie was involved in a big festival in Spain, and it was going to be a big bull ring, a big event. And there'd be a stage in the middle of the bull ring. He'd be there, playing. He'd have jazz band there. But they wanted a pop band as well. So they were looking for something a bit funky, a bit, sort of soulful. So our band, the band I joined, were called up to fit the bill. So I remember rehearsing at Ronnie Scott's, and then we were trying to find a songwriter to work with us to create a song for this event. And I always remember Ronnie Scott, when he found out I was from Liverpool, you said, you little scarskit. Come here, you little scarskit. Come on, get up, you little scarskit. So that was my little nickname. Then we performed there, and I remember we had a meeting with a guy called Albert Hammond. And Albert Hammond at the time was an unknown songwriter, but he worked for Marky Lavini Music, which was part of Radio Luxembourg Complex, which was an old radio station from many years ago. So we got together and we all wrote a song together, and we wrote the title for this event, the Spanish event. So what was it called? A Girl Called Fantasy. That's it. It's called A Girl Called Fantasy. And actually, it's quite a good track. The only problem is that the event ran out of money. So we had a label deal with Epic Records, which is the one I eventually became director of. We had a label deal with there. We had all this other thing going on. We'd even done a couple of TV shows on the basis that, and this is the band that are going to be featured in, which never ever happened.
Oh, no.
And I still have a chuckle. I spoke to Albert Hammond ages ago about it. It was just fun. But yeah, so I've got a co-write on a track that never ever done anything. But that was history.
Well,
And McCartney, sorry, and McCartney slope, yeah. So as a byproduct, before the single was released, before the actual festival didn't happen, we done some live gigs, and we were doing live gigs around some funky clubs. And the funkiest club in the UK at the time, in the 60s, was a club called the Bag of Nails. And that was cool. Hendrix played, you name it, who's who. Anyway, we get the gig. So we're playing there. And Neil sort of tipped us off. Neil said, look, I'll get Paul to come down. You know, we'll have a bit of a laugh. So Neil turned up with me mate Bill. Paul turned up with, I don't know who he's with, going out with at the time. But anyway, because we were Scousers, he was all excited. So he came in the back and we had a little bit of worky burky, which was like the little Bacardi and Coke at the time. So we had a great little laugh. He goes out and we start playing. Next thing is he's on the table with a couple of mates going, yeah, come on. So yeah, that was our first champion, Macca the Smacker. He's great. And I still see him now, every year, sort of, I go to Lipper. He's got a great, university that teaches theatrics and musicians and all that bit. And it's really good to see. But I've got some great shots because I gave him a little harmonica and I called it the Macca Smacker. And he was in love with it. He loved it. And every year we normally get together. I'll try and catch him out without this little mini harmonica. And he'll always have it. And there'll be a shot of us playing the harmonica, whatever. So it's great, yeah. He's a lovely guy, and a workaholic. And, you get people saying, oh, why is he still, getting on stage? The voice is going and all that. It's a drug. If anyone has been in a band, when you walk out on that stage, the buzz, it's like the adrenaline rush.
Sure.
And I can vouch for that. My biggest gig was the, where was it? Wembley Stadium. I played there for a week at Wembley with Culture Club, having played on Chameleon.
I was going to say, that's where we have to talk about the harmonica. Yeah.
Yeah, which is this little instrument that everyone's coming to town with cases and this, that, and I've got a little harmonica. This seems to have done me proud through the... But, I'm going off on a tangerine now. What was
the gig in Wembley?
Oh, yeah. So it's the buzz you get, why does McCartney still play? Why do certain other people still play? There's an adrenaline rush of playing a song on stage and seeing a response. And it gives you the weirdest buzz ever. You can't explain it. It's just an adrenaline rush. And he loves playing. That's his life. I mean, the Cavern Club, he's a workaholic. And if you look at any of the Beatles films, he's always there on the case, doing the thing. I remember he kindly invited me to play on an album, Flowers in the Dirt, I think it's called. And I remember turning up at his place in the car, and he's got this studio, but in the gardens is a big windmill, massive windmill. And it had scaffolding round. And John, his roadie at the time, came over. All right, John, are you okay? I said, yeah, great. I said, well, I'll tell you, come here. Anyway, Paul walked out. Linda was with him at the time. And they came out. And I'm looking up at the scaffold. And I said, what's happening here? He said, we're going to get it back working operation because Linda wants to make some bread, with the... I said, bread? I said, Paul, I've just passed Tesco's up the road. It's only down there. He found it funny. She didn't get it. But I ended up playing on there, and she took some lovely shots of me in the studio. And like with all tracks, I played this funky little harmonica line, and quite often they only use a snippet. And I get really upset.
You should.
I had a great time at Wembley, and I got the same buzz. You get out there, the adrenaline goes, and before you know it, you're sucked into this amazing high. And I put a gig on a couple of years back, and there was a guy with the Mersey Beats, and the Mersey Beats were a famous band many years ago in the 60s, but we're all getting on a bit, and I had him headlining our little gig for all our old friends. Anyway, he's in the back room, and he's had a few little problems. As you get older, you do. And he was a little bit concerned about going on, thinking, I don't know whether I can do it, and blah, blah, blah. I said, promise you, as soon as you walk out there, it'll be a total. He said, no. He said, anyway, I forced him into doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, and here he is, Tony Crane from the Merseys. And he walked out, and I let him be, and I came back, and I was backstage. And then he came out, and he went, you know what? He said, I just can't believe that. He said, I felt like 15 again. And it happened, the adrenaline rush. So it's that thing, and people wonder why is he still doing it? Why are they still doing it? It's this high. It's just a weird...
You have a secret way of forcing people to do things, because there's a great story about Jeff Beck and the interview.
Jeffrey. Oh, he's every guitarist's hero. I mean, they all idolize him, and he's barking mad in a nice way. Anyway, I'm at Epic Records in my director of promotions role, and I recall a phone call from a guy called Morris Oberstein, who was a New York lawyer who eventually became chairman of, CBS UK. And he was a funny guy. I loved him to death. He was very funny. But I remember one occasion I'm in the office, and then the phone goes, "Hey, Judd, get up here." He says, "Get up here." He said, "I've got Jeff Beck's manager with me, Ernest Chapman." So I said, "Okay." He said, "Be prepared." On the words, that was the tip off. Be prepared for no, and yes, yes. Anyway, I go up. And, we have this album. We just signed him up. Oh, America just spent a fortune in advance to get him to do new album. So, all sorted, everything else. And then Obi says to me, you do the setup. Obi said, "Judd, what can we do for Jeff? What shows can we get him? We need to get that record going because we just paid shitloads of money to Jeff and Ernest here and blah, blah, blah." So I start going through the list, and I go through the pepper list, News Today, this, that, and the other. They go, "No, we won't do that. No, we won't do that. No." And he's trying to get out of everything. And then the end, I said, he's got to do something. I said, "What about the old grey whistle test?" Judd, he said, "I think he might bite on that one." So I thought, great, I've got him here. So all sorted. He was going to do the old guy. He'd already done it, a while ago, but then revisit it, because we got the album now. So all sorted. Date was sorted. I think it was a Friday night. The show was recorded live. It was a live transmission. So all sorted. Thursday evening, I'm at home, and I'd had a few sherbets, and I remember having a curry in the bed. Let's see, I lived on my own then. It wouldn't wipe. Anyway, so I'm having my little after drinks meal, and then the phone goes. "Hello, sorry to call you so late. Ernest here, Ernest Chapman." I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I've got a bit of a problem tomorrow." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Jeff's not doing the show. He can't do the show. He's got too much to do at home." So he'd already mentioned he's at home. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, he's got a few things he has to do." I said, "But this is a major TV show. This is the only one he's got." No. Yeah, "I'm sorry, Judd. I know it's bad news." He said, "What can I say?" Anyway, phone goes down. I go, shit, what do I do now? So I thinks to myself, he's at home, right, I'll have to take a gamble. So the limo comes to pick me up. Bloody big long thing, as if you go to a funeral. Anyway, and I'm thinking, I know. So I grabbed the bagpipes, because I remembered him hating, at the time's Hi-O Silver Lining. He wasn't originally a fan of that one. So we get the bagpipes in, put them by me, off we go. So I'm getting to his house now. I knew where he was, because the driver already had been given all the info. As we're driving up to this mansion, a beautiful house, a really big country pile with two gatehouses, two little lodge houses. And as we get near, I start taking my clothes off in the back of the limo. Now, the driver's caught me in his mirror, and he said, "Are you all right there, Captain?" He said, "A bit hot in the back." I said, "No." He said, "Geez, well, yeah." I said, "Don't worry. You're being paid. You stay in all day. Took me in 2 days. You stay here. Leave it to me." I took all my gear off, got the bagpipes, and then I marched through the gatehouses, through the main gate, playing Hi-Ho Silver Lining on the bagpipes, which I knew he hated. So I'm going through, and then I noted the curtains of the gatehouse just opening and closing. And the cleaner had obviously phoned up the main house. And Celia, his girlfriend, comes out, looks at me, screams and runs back. And believe me, it wasn't the size of me, Willie. I think it's just being naked. So anyway, so I dash back. I'm playing away. She's dashed back in. And Jeff comes out with a baseball bat, American baseball bat. Who the fuck? We've never met before. Remember this? We've never, ever met. And he's going, who the fuck are you? Who the fuck? You're giving me brief. And I said, I'm from the fucking record company. If I can turn up like this, you could do the TV show tonight. He said, I'm not doing it. I said, you're going to do it. I'm not going. He said, no, I don't want to do it. He says, look, can't we just put the record out and let it do its own thing? I said, no, I've got a remit. You've got to do the show. Oh, he said, put your fucking clothes on and come in. So I it was cold, actually. Otherwise, I would have looked quite well. But anyway, that's a Chilly Willy. That's another story. So I go in and we're having a cup of coffee now. And he said, I always remember because recently there's been that big sell-off of his guitars. He had a little mini Fender and I could see him playing away on this mini Fender. It's just amazing watching him play, watching the telly. He's trying to ignore me now. And I'm sitting there with now Celia being the hostess, do you want another coffee? Well, anyway, an hour goes by, 2 hours. He said, aren't you going? I said, nope, I'm not going. He said, well, I'm not doing the show. And in the end, he thought, one way to get rid of me is to say, I'll do the show if you come on the show the way you arrived at my house. Well, what do you do?
You did it.
That's it. The rest is history. Nobody knew. And then suddenly I'm in the wings and I'd already got the kit up and I marched past. So Jeff's having a chat with Annie Nightingale and then the bagpipes go with me. I ended up, I had to stick some gaffer tape over the old bill. But, and it was quite cold there as well. But he'd done it. But the funniest thing after the show, on the way back, I was dropping him off. He said, look, that was funny, that. He said, I loved that. He said, really good. He said, it's my birthday at the weekend. He said, I want you to come to the party. I said, oh, that's kind. He said, but put some fuck clothes on.
I thought you were going to say, but you have to bring the bagpipe.
No. I ended up playing the harmonica, so I got to go away with it, yeah. But no, and he put it in his book. I think it's in his book, and Annie Nightingale, bless her, she was fantastic. It's in her book as well. So I got a bit of a note. I've puffed up in quite a few books, actually. A little name through doing stupid things.
Yeah. And you had lots of people working for the Brits for, 22 years you did?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was by default. There was a great guy, chairman of Warner Brothers, Rob Dickens, who married there was a Top of the Pops girl dance troupe called Pan's People. He married Cherry out of Pan's People. And lovely guy, really got on well with him. And he called me out of the blue. I think I was working with either Chrysalis Records or London Records. But I could get this call wanting me to join a meeting, the BPI meeting, to discuss the Brit Awards at the big Warner building in Kensington. So I go along to that and I'm just throwing in my penny's worth, I think that would be great. What about putting lasers outside? Make it like Hollywood, so just in an in an advisory capacity. So chatting away, doing all that. And then the next thing is he said, look, all the people, all the directors of the company and everyone else, and most of the artists around. Why don't we get you as like floor director with the cameras so that, if anything happens, you're there. If anything, you'll know the record executive. So a little bit of glam shots on them, make them feel important. And the presenters know, So that was the role. I become a floor director for all the winners and often I get them coming up, various, nominees saying, Judd, do you know anything? I can't say anything. And I'd always get the camera. We'd have about 4 floor cameras, but one would be with me for the main bit where, and the winner is, and I go to someone who's lost and just hover, and you could see the peacock feathers coming up already. And then the winner is, and the camera zooms off to the other person. Amy Winehouse was sweet because she'd been nominated for her award. And she came over to me and a little whisper in the ear, and she hadn't had a drink. I mean, she was always on good behavior there, and I just feel, sadly, things went wrong later stage. But she said to me, Judd, she said, if I should win, she said, would you get my mum and dad on camera? I said, well, should you win? I said, I might oblige. So off we go. And of course, and the winner is, and Amy, if you see it, I told her to hang around a little bit, even though normally they get up and go off. And she's going, Mum and Dad. So we got them all on shot. And after the show in the hospitality backstage, she gave me a little hug and said, thank you very much. It was quite sweet. The memorable things like that I like.
Yeah.
Take that I used to get on well with, because I played with Mark. He performed at Shepherd's Bush Empire when the band had split up originally. So I'd done a bit of harmonica work with him there live on stage. Howard, I'd worked on his first solo project when they split, and I'd never got to meet the other guy, but I knew they all loved Liverpool, so that was perfect. I'm a Liverpool supporter. So every time they were at the Brit Awards, we'd have a bit of banter going on, and have a laugh. And it was really cool. And I always found the rehearsals were the buzziest of all, because the artists would be totally relaxed. They walk on stage and and mess about, whether it be Prince, whether it be or Taylor. Remember Taylor Swift? She was ever so sweet. I remember her performance, and their first performance was like, wow. And you could see that girl was on a mission for sort of set design.
I always when I see her, I think businesswoman.
Total. And I think she's got a steadfast family. And of course, because of their own business acumen, that's rubbed off on her. I just feel the head on the shoulders for her to re-record all the tracks was such a gamble.
Mm-hmm.
It worked because she had the savvy of utilizing the fan base. And she was what can I say, a champion in going that route of using the fan base and using social media and bringing it today to what it is,
How do you feel about social media? Because you would have seen, like, in the day when you had to properly hustle. Now people are hustling on social media, and a lot of it is fake, to be honest. So the way, if you go back to my earlier days, when I was plugging, say, the Jacksons or ABBA, and a bit earlier, in the UK, there were only 2, then 3 networks, TV-wise. So if I got ABBA on even one of the special summer shows, which was NAF, it used to have a variety of acts, I'd be hitting over 4 or 5 million viewers. So take a percentage of that buying into the band, then you've got a number 1 hit. Yeah.
And that's what happened. Then Capital came along, Capital Radio. Then all the other commercials said, suddenly it's whittling down. And now I've got to make a decision of, where do I place the band to do interviews? Well, I'd have to break them up in order to try and gain the same thing. And then when social media come along, it was a little bit of a breath of fresh air. But now it's become oversaturated to the point of, how do you sell yourself? You've got to be so clever. You've got to come up. There's a band called The Vintage Explosion that came to me. They're from Scotland. And I was with Rod Stewart doing an ITN News interview. And Rod said, have a listen to me. And a guy called Johnny said, have a listen to this. And he played a track to us. And it's this band called The Vintage Explosion. And the white guy sounded like an amazing black singer, really good vocal range and everything else. And then it turned out he looks like a professor with glasses and everything. But he was canny with social media, and he worked TikTok. I mean, if you look at the Vintage Explosion on TikTok, very clever the way he presented the band using a basic old shot, but it worked. And it works with certain other people, but you've got to be so clever. It's a lot tougher now. And Spotify hasn't helped. I mean, I must admit, I've got my issues with Spotify. I mean, whilst I remember being involved when it was all being muted about this new platform coming along, and I always remember an artist going out on the road with CDs. If they sold a CD, it would be sort of, say, retailer £3 if it's a single. Of that £3, they probably get about, depending on the deal, but they could get £1.50 to £2 after production costs. And that was the money that they'd reinvest into, how they, into the band themselves and on gear, car and all that bit. Spotify. How many thousands do you need to sell? Sorry, how many millions do you need to sell to? And the public are not aware of this. Like the way the problem is the majors have a vested interest, and it's all the independent artists that suffer, and the young artists who are not signed to the majors that are suffering. It's not a fair playing field. And I said to McCartney, because Paul done something on BBC TV not so long ago, shouting about this, because he's like a little A&R man himself in his head. He loves finding new bands and everything else. And I said to him, fantastic that you shout out about it. And he said, yeah, just doing my bit. And there are lots of other musicians out there doing the same, trying to help the young bands, get alive, get some money. Even the gigs now with young bands, the young bands are the ones who have to hustle 50 people to make up the ante to perform. My day, a great example here. This is a little diary from the 60s. And that Frank Hesse's was the music store that the Beatles and everyone would go to buy their gear. And here, I think if I can find it here. Yeah, here you go. This is how much we earned. I don't know whether you can see.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Look at that. There's what, £12, £9?
Yeah.
Yeah, tally that up. Equate that to 1963. And we as a band were making decent money.
Yeah.
Bands don't make money now. And I think it's a disgrace. Spotify, if I had the power, I'd make Spotify up the ante because millions have gone somewhere. The platform, the creative input into it is great. I don't fault that at all.
Yeah.
But they've got to pay for it.
Yeah.
It's not their content. It's artists' content that they're using. And the artists have got nowhere to go. Their hands are tied behind the back. They've got to get on there if they want a bit of profile or where the fans get. And that is wrong. It is totally wrong. And they know that. And I've been an ambassador shouting. Even there's a chap called Lord Story at the House of Commons. He's a lovely guy. I've had a chat with him and I'm going to meet up with him because, it's a mission to try and help bands. I deal with bands now, young bands who come cap in hand saying we don't have much money for promotion, this, that and the other. And mug me, I end up, if I feel sorry for them, I help them. They should be earning, if I get them airplay or whatever, the BBC pay, and that's just. Likewise with other stations, they pay for the use of a track. Spotify, no. I fume when I get on that point because I want it to be, Taylor Swift and all the other people have succumbed to Spotify. But between you and I think other people, there's a deal gone on there. There's got to be somewhere down the line. I'm saying that from me alone, I feel something, there's a backdoor deal that's happened there for them to, but again, Taylor might see it as an avenue. I don't know the politics in her particular case or in any of the other bigger artists' case. Well, they're going to be earning money anyway because they're going to attract their audience to their platform. And, the money now is obviously from live concerts as well.
That's right.
And I wish, people without the balls like Taylor, I know she's already had her opinion. McCartney has, and a lot of other artists have. But they know they're losing. They're on a dead, Anyway, I'm not going to go. I put my point across.
It's so true, and I agree with you 100%. I do want to hear the Culture Club story, though.
Well, that's the culture.
And are you tired of telling it?
No. I'm getting pulled down. My friends are tired of hearing it. No, I mean, that was very bizarre. It all happened in the 80s. I had left Epic Records and I joined Motown as a label manager type role, director of Motown UK, whatever it was at the time. And So, and it was when the big event happened in Pasadena, the big Motown event, which was amazing, believe me. Wow. But anyway, I'm in the office working away and I get a phone call from an old mate, Steve Levine. Now, Steve was, he was the producer and engineer, chief engineer of CBS Records in Whitfield Street in London. And I, downtown, I'd ask him if I could play a bit of harmonica and do this. Or if there's a section, he'd phone me up and kindly say, do you want to jump on this section? So we were old buddies, from the old days. And eventually I'd gone off to do my thing, and the CBS thing had closed down the studio. And he was producing now. And then he ended up saying, look, I'm working with this band, Culture Club. I want to try some harmonica on this track. We're at Red Bus Studios up by Marylebone. Do you fancy popping over? And I said, yeah. He said, well, look, I'll send you over. He sent me over a cassette. They always used to send a cassette with the track on to have a listen to, see if there's any. So I go there. I'm going to the studio, and this rather bizarre-looking character in the control room who looked a little bit worse for wear. So I was just thinking he must be the T-boy or something. It turned out to be Boy George. But anyway, he's there. And Steve's in the studio with me, and we're just talking about ideas. So I listened to the track, and I felt there was like a country little oddball edge to it. So I said, well, why don't we incorporate that with some sustained notes? And he said, okay. And we messed about a bit. Actually, I don't know whether I'd do it. Somebody's just given me this harmonica. It hasn't been used, actually. You see, I've still got the comments there. See if this works. So I was trying to work it out how we do it. And so it's like and then I thought, well, So anyway, we messed about. And I laid a few tracks down, and then we merged them all together, and boom, that came out. But the first one was Church of the Poison Mind. So I think the Church was the first one, and then that. And it seemed to fit with the track. And everyone said, great. So they put Church of the Poison Mind out first. Then they said to me, will you come and do the show with us on Top of the Pops? I thought, well, yeah, I'll have a bit of that. Why not? It sounds fun. So I went to Top of the Pops with them. And then George started putting outfits on me. I said, I can't go on like that. In the end, we compromised. And he gave me, I think, on Church, I might have had a dead cat on my head. It was supposed to be a Canadian Mountie or something. Really. So I had this dead cat on my head on the first one. And then on Karma Chameleon, he dressed me up as a Confederate officer and then as a policeman in something else. So I had an array of outfits. I think he just got excited, mixing the whole band up in outrageous gear. So, and it was all done. The session was all done fairly quickly. And as a matter of fact, and I've still got the receipt for, I think I got £100 for the actual session. And they're sort of in this sort of rather, unexciting sort of event became the biggest ever hit and the UK's biggest hit of the year with Karma Chameleon. And, then there were mimics, weren't there, of the little chameleon on a telephone, and all the advertisers got involved. And I think to this day, Karma is used on so many things.
It is.
I think Virgin TV had it the other week on there. And when I go into Tesco's, my daughter goes, cha-ching, if she hears it on the... So it's given me a few balls.
And moving on, you're playing with the Spice Girls, but you had a connection with them without even knowing before recording.
Oh, that was bizarre. Yes, the Spice Girls, yeah. Because Baby Spice, I used to drink with her father, who was a milk official, I'd call him. He's a lovely guy, Trevor. He now lives in Ireland, but we occasionally keep in touch. But Trevor was my drinking buddy when I was up in Whetstone, where I lived in North Finchley. And we'd have a drink there. And he'd always tell me about his daughter. She's doing a bit of modelling. She's doing a bit of TV work and all that. But great on you, Trevor. Yeah, fabulous. Anyway, years go by. And I do the session, and it's at Olympia Studios in Barnes. And the girls are there all writing away. And I just waved at them, and, they waved back. And I haven't taken on board, Baby Spice at all, Emma, she was just there with the guys. I went upstairs and I went to the studio, met the producers, what you want? Oh, we're just wondering if you do. a little lick over the bridge. You really wanted to lift it. I said, no problem. And there's a girl there, and it was, scary spice. And I was saying, any chance of a cup of tea, love? Thinking she was the tea girl or the operator. So if you went up, make me a cup of tea. And then somebody said she's one of the girls. Anyway, so I laid the track. And again, it's just, you're in, you're doing a session, you do your bit, and you say, you happy with that? Yeah. And then off I go. So I left, and then it was the Brit Awards. And I was working on the Brit Awards by this time, when they get their big Golden Globe, it's a big thing. And it was when Jerry wore that mini, outfit, the one where you could see in knickers with the, she wasn't holding back, that one. But Paul Conroy, who was chairman of Virgin at the time, and he was an old friend of mine. And he said, Judd, you're going to be in for a surprise. I said, oh, yeah. Well, I didn't realize about the outfit. So anyway, I'm just walking around the crowds because I'd often look for shots. Because I remember getting Bowie's wife on camera. She was lovely, supporting David on one of the shows on the table. And I said, is it okay? She said, yeah, come on, yeah. David, So, and I'd have Goldie from a James Bond movie. Goldie would say to me, do you want something? I'd say, yeah, they could open his teeth and, yeah. So I used to set up a lot of little funny bits there because of my relationship with whatever. Anyway, on this Brit Awards, I'm walking along and I see Trevor all booted and suited. I said, Trevor, what are you doing here? I said, this is not your sort of gig. My daughter. He said, well, what do you mean your daughter? Well, she's getting an award. And I said, well, where's it? He said, oh, Emma Bunting, but, oh, gee, click. Only 20 years later. So small world. So, and his wife was, I remember she used to do karate and everything. She was quite fun. So Emma, and then I remember Emma coming in because I worked at a film company once, a TV company. And then she came in for a casting. So yeah, and she'd done adverts years ago. And then the penny dropped and went, silly fool. I could have gone in and said, Emma, I know your dad went out to the recording. But there you go. So
but that track flew through that track. It just flew up the charts.
Oh yeah. I think I said to one of them, I said, why didn't you give me a call? I would have come out to that video. It looked ever so exciting. I said, I could have been that guy behind you just in the boiler room playing away. I never get all these exotic sort of locations I never ever got to.
Even the Culture Club, the person playing the harmonica is not even you.
Oh, I know. That's funny. Well, Boy George was confronted with that on This Morning TV, the UK, on This Morning TV. And the presenter, I think it was set up because I knew some of the crew at This Morning, but he turned around and he said, who was that the actual chap who was playing harmonica on that video? And he said, no, it was the famous Judd Lander. So he gave me a bit of a name check. But what had happened, I was away anyway in America because I was with Motown at the time. And I think it was at Pasadena. Something had happened where I was out of town and they wanted to film it. They had a location. So they decided to get an old, colourful gentleman to play my role. And everybody has a chuckle when it comes on. You're talking about bizarre, sort of, was it him or was it them? I had the weirdest experience once with, I done later with Jules, the Hoot Nanny show, his New Year's Eve show, with George again. And we were doing Karma Chameleon and Jules on piano and everyone, Tom Jones was on the show. And I'm in a t-shirt with a thing like a jailbreaker thing because he just got out of Nick. You're winding him up. So anyway, we're playing away. We record the whole show and that's recorded well before New Year's Eve. So I go to a party New Year's Eve with a lot of friends out in the country in this rather posh do. And they had a massive screen on telly and they were playing Hoot Nanny. So I'm dancing with the host's wife and we're all having a sing song. And I could see she's looking at me, looking at the screen, looking at me. And she couldn't work it out. And she said, that's you on telly. I said, yeah. She said, but it's New Year's Eve. How could you? And I had to explain it was true. It was quite funny.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I loved having this conversation. I could talk.
Well, let's carry on. I've got 2 days left. Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. But, it's great that you're getting the message out there. So listen, fantastic. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Take care.
Thanks a lot.
With the hits.
Thank you very much. I'm going to keep watching your interviews online because I'm enjoying them so much.
Great. You take care, kiddo.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.